Um, you know what's here's the interesting thing is oftentimes what I witness in conversations with you is something that you will say, and I won't know how serious it is,
Yeah.
or what the gravity of it is, But I remember, I mean, it was a few years ago when you said that you had deleted your Facebook page,
Yeah,
and
it was. I did.
it was due to some kind of a censorship,
That's
right?
exactly what it was. I
Yeah.
I put up back then. This was it. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. It was in 2020, and it was in February of that year. And I'm always bothered by censorship. But I put up it wasn't a political article. I put up an article by some doctors that were citing vitamin C as important protection, against viruses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so Facebook took that post down because that was misleading information. Now,
They took it down.
now is that really misleading information? So where did I get my information about vitamin C from? I got it from a bunch of doctors. So I was not making and I didn't write anything about vitamin C myself. I just put articles up by doctors about vitamin C. I've got opinions on vitamin C, and they're quite positive, but that's not what I put on Facebook. Now, so they took this article down. Now,
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
That was before any of this pandemic stuff started happening, right?
Actually, it was not. It was after the pandemic started.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah. But, you have to ask yourself, what in the world would motivate a major corporation to be so concerned about protecting people's safety, especially with respect to a substance like vitamin C? I mean, do people really do that out of the kindness of their hearts to protect the public? Now, I've already made the point many times that there's this idea that's the incentive to serve that's just imagined into existence. But people that work in corporations, they do it at a very high level. But they're the same. They're in it for the same reasons that you have your window makeover business. People that go into the flower business, they go into the insurance business. Now, as individuals, they can be concerned about other people, but in business, business is primarily generated out of self-interest. So social media has no natural interest in protecting their viewers. If they did, they would have been doing this for the last 10 to 12 years. So suddenly, Facebook gets interested in the damage people are doing by passing, information back and forth. Now, I know from writing it and studying crowd behavior my whole life and writing the Fantasy Free Economics blog that determining the truth or fiction about anything is really not very easy. To say that one thing is absolutely true and another thing is absolutely false. I work at it constantly. It's very, very, very difficult. And the thought that someone knows how to write computer code and that qualifies them to determine what everybody in the United States should see and hear, that's a little bit absurd, especially when you think about what a democratic system is actually based on. Now, we hear calls constantly to unite the country, that the country is not united, and that's not a good thing. But if you think about what it really means to what would it really mean to unite a democracy? See, the whole concept of democracy is based on the idea that unity in opinions and thoughts is not necessary, and that there's not necessarily any one national agenda that everybody gets behind. So as soon as you unite the country, especially behind a political movement, and move in one direction. As you go, you're getting closer and closer to a totalitarian system. Now, see, when you in free markets, which is what I specialize in, we get the very, very best outcome when buyers and sellers, compete for buying and selling goods and services. Democracy works the same way. When you have lots and lots of ideas and thoughts that are being passed and forth, and honestly, some of them are not true, but the public is just as capable of figuring out what is not true for themselves as someone in a corporate suite. But you do this over and over and over, say these things over and over and over again, and people start believing that yes, we should unite the country. We should all be like a bunch of horses, like the Budweiser horses pulling a big wagon. See, when someone asks you to help unite the country, what they really want you to do is to fall on the sword for your country.
Well, you know what I hear when I hear somebody say let's all unite.
Yeah.
One of the things that I hear is the idea that I have to agree with what you're telling me.
That's right.
Right? Or
That's
at least
right.
act like I do. And I think that in order for the country to unite, what at least half the country would have to do is put on a show.
That's exactly right.
They have to act like they agree. It's like when I go to one of these corporate stores, and I go to Home Depot a lot, or we go to Walmart, and all that kind of thing. We have I see all the time. One of the things I see all the time is people who wear their masks in such a way so as to just, how would you say, to just put on the show enough so that they can keep their job.
Yeah.
Right? And so
exactly.
So what that demonstrates to me is that they're not true believers in, quote unquote, the mask, and the mask is just an example. So their unity is a feigned unity, and really what they're doing is they're actually, by wearing the mask, they're actually looking out for their best interest at that time because they have to keep their job.
Exactly.
And so what they do is they just shut up and they wear it, and if they really want to be good servants to the corporation that provides for them, then what they can then do is prove their worth to the corporation by then becoming what I would call a sheepdog. Right. If it's the sheep that are out there wearing a mask, right? Well, a sheepdog is an enforcer of the sheep. And what the sheepdog does is they take it upon themselves to go and enforce the will of the corporation.
Right.
To prove their worth to the corporation. So hopefully that when times get tough, their allegiance to the corporation will save their hide in the end.
Right.
Because that's what they're really doing. So that's what I see when I see the word unity. All I see is feigned compliance by the majority.
Let me chime in on that. Okay. Because you just brought up something that's one of my favorite topics, and that is what it takes to survive in the world, right? So let's suppose that survival depended on nothing but living your whole life comfortably and reproducing. And actually that's the outcome of most lives. Now, people are prone to do what allows them to do that very thing most effectively and most efficiently. Now, we're not talking yet about whether there's any higher reasons for doing something, but to get through life itself, the most efficient way to do it that has evolved is the system of go along to get along. Right? So we can't be too hard on these people, because what would these people do if they weren't going along to get along? No, the average person does not have the power or the skills, to go out and round up and herd and manage other people. So a person naturally, morphs into this system of go along to get through life. And actually, most people can make more money, much more money, by going along to get along than they can by doing the things, bucking the system, like a guy, very well, that I never got rich bucking the system. Now, but, if I would have been a go along to get along guy, we would have had a whole lot more money, and I would be really wealthy right now. But that wasn't in my nature to be that way. So I was really put at a disadvantage through most of my life, not really being able to go along to get along. Now, but that is the most efficient way to get through life. Now, when do people get out of the go along to get along mode? Now, that happens when they start suffering. Nobody's going to change anything until they start suffering. Now, if you look at periods where we had real serious social movements, like in the 60s, we were involved in the Vietnam War, and hardly anybody worried much about the draft in the Vietnam War until we started taking serious casualties. But when everyday people were being drafted and forced to go over and fight and die in Vietnam, and they really couldn't ascertain a really good reason for doing it, I mean, people started suffering. People my age started, your age really started losing sons and daughters. And
for what reason?
Coming home in body bags for no different reasons. So people actually did get upset about Vietnam, and they took to the streets. They did all kinds of things. It started out with the young. Young people were the most affected by the war, so they were the ones that were the least interested in going over there to fight. So we had massive demonstrations that would put anything that's going on today to shame. Now, you have to understand that we got into this situation right after the country was united. It would be hard to say that it was really the country seldom as united as it was after John Kennedy got elected, after he got assassinated, and for the first several years of Lyndon Johnson's administration. Now, let's look where uniting the country got us. It got an escalation in the Vietnam War. It got a false flag of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and countless individuals were being sent overseas to fall on the sword for the country. And any legitimate agenda of that war had already been lost. The number of North Vietnamese that were killed by our bombs, they amounted to the into the millions, 2 million maybe. Now, this is what we get when we unite the country. We end up following the leader, and the leader leads us into an abyss, and we regret it greatly. So the fact that the country is not united right now is one of the really few good things that we've got going on in the country. And God forbid if we do get united, because if we get united, we're going to get united behind the very people who are trying to unite us right now. And they're not trying to unite us for our benefit. It's for their benefit, and we'll all fall on the sword for our country if we buy into it. Wow.
No, I mean, yeah. Well, the reason I say wow, and we can edit this out, but that was pretty powerful.
Well, it was meant to be powerful, but you know what? Anybody that doesn't believe lies can see this immediately. The fact is, we're trained so much throughout life to believe what's not true. Whenever I say something like that, it sounds outrageous, but all I'm doing is describing what you get out of human nature.
Well, let me ask you this. Can we just go back just for a second then? Okay. The unity that you were talking about after John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
Can you describe that a little bit better? What was the basis of that unity?
The basis it was just a general feeling of well-being that President Kennedy was a good guy. There was peace in the country. Everything was going in the right direction. Business was good. You know, it was just.
How long after World War II was that?
Well, the 60s, that's, let's say 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years.
20 years.
Because I was trying to understand, what kind of a unity that was. Was that a unity as in general agreement? Because surely everybody was still diverse.
Yeah.
In their viewpoints, I guess. Well, okay. What about this? Wasn't what was the feeling about communism back then? Was it did that have anything to do with it? Were they unified on that? Because I guess people had seen the Nazis and what had happened there. That wasn't necessarily communism, but as far as I understand, the Soviet Union was certainly communist, and people didn't want anything to do with that. I'm just trying to I guess understand what the unity was.
Well, it was. I would say back then it was not really. It was really not just one thing. There was not a lot. There was just a minimum of political disagreement. Barry Goldwater had lost very, very badly to Johnson in 1964. I mean, he just got slaughtered. It was just a complete Democratic sweep. So at that particular point, the Democrats had everybody on their side, and they could do just about anything they wanted to with the country. It wasn't as easy then because a lot of the Democratic Party was still very, very conservative. We still had staunch conservative Democrats in Texas back then.
So those are the Blue Dog Democrats.
Yeah, the Blue Dog Democrats. But that's pretty much the way it was.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the context because I was born in '72, and so that's when you're a kid, you don't really catch on to anything political until at least high school. I mean, I remember Carter being president. I remember Reagan being president.
Yeah.
But who was president when I was born?
Let's see, you were born in 1972. That would have to be Richard Nixon.
So Nixon was president?
Wait a minute, let me make sure. Just a second. He was elected in 68, and he ran against George McGovern in 72.
Okay.
Now, that's another thing. He slaughtered McGovern, right?
He did.
Yeah, he just completely wiped him out. And then the United States, we were really solidly behind Nixon. For a long time. We expected a lot out of him. Nixon pretty much got his way. And while he was getting his way, he took the country permanently off the gold standard, and created a flow of unending unearned money that goes into the economy. He pardoned Jimmy Hoffa in return for a $2 million campaign contribution, or a contribution of some kind. And then everybody remembers only Watergate. But this is what you get whenever you unite the country behind a president.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
That's exactly what you get when you unite the country behind the country. We're not. I don't support presidents. I don't support. My job as a citizen is to rein a president in. It's not to. It's not to worship him, and to treat him like he's my fairy godfather or something like that. The whole is that if people don't rein in their politicians, the politicians are getting out of hand. You have to rein in politicians the same way you have to pull weeds out of your garden.
Yeah. Not a lot of that going on right
now. You go on and you elect presidents and congressmen, and you just say, well, okay, we've elected you. You go up there and you do a good job. That's the same as letting weeds grow in your garden.
Yeah.
They take over the garden, and the corruption these people or naturally possess expresses itself in our lives. Now, I'll bring something else up about corruption and natural law. There's one natural law. I've never yet had a person disagree with this. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, is there anything about that that you disagree about, or that you would think anybody else would disagree with?
I don't necessarily. I don't think I would disagree with that. But
Now, there's more to this.
well, I think what I would say about that is that I don't know that I would understand how that works. You know what I'm saying? I could understand that power corrupts.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't necessarily. Just because of I guess maybe a lack of experience or not paying attention.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to witness how absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And you never will.
You
You never will, because that's the nature of natural law.
Yeah. What do you mean?
These are all things that are true. They're self-evident. And you can't prove them. Our declaration, the preamble to our declaration of independence starts off to state that our rights, our God-given rights, are natural, and they come from our Creator. So our very nation starts off with a point of natural law in the citing of something that's self-evident. So there's lots of things that are self-evident, and we can't prove that they're true, but they work out to be true over and over and over again, so much that we know that they're true, even if we can't prove it. Now, let me say one more thing about where I was going with power corrupts. So even if you don't know how it works, I don't know how it works either. I don't care how it works. But if power absolutely does corrupt, let's say, and a little power corrupts a little bit and a lot corrupts a whole lot, is there any reason why the President of the United States would not be more corrupt the day after he was elected than the day before he was elected?
Yeah, that sounds like a trap. Is what it sounds like.
It's not a trap. What it is
I don't know how to answer that.
Huh?
I don't know how to answer that.
What it is it's a paradox. Say we've treated a president like the president is going to be some gift to humanity. But what we've done is we've immediately corrupted somebody, and we know that the more power the president gets, the more corrupt he's going to get. And he had to be plenty powerful to be elected the president to the presidency to begin with. So he was corrupt when he started. But when he takes over as president, then he's even more corrupt than he was before. And the more following he gets, the more corrupt he's going to get. And this is true of all national leaders. You have to be very skeptical, very protective of yourself with respect to a president, because a president is a national leader. Now, where do the world's biggest despots come from? Where did Idi Amin come from, and Adolf Hitler and Stalin? These are all world leaders, the emperor, the people in Japan during World War II. Now, if you take this number of world leaders that I just mentioned, and where all of these absolutely horrible, destructive people come from, you take those few and you divide those by, all of the world leaders that there were at that time, you're going to have a huge percentage of world leaders that are out causing havoc in the world. So the idea that we should trust the president or any other world leader is complete nonsense. Now, and I'm just talking reality. And we've talked about this before. The attempted escape from reality begins at birth. But reality imposes itself on humanity about every 50 years. This is what happened in World War II, the Great Depression. And by golly, it's happening right now. We're going to have reality imposed on people, and we're going to think we're going to discover the government really has no magical power. And deeming it as having magical power doesn't mean that it does.
Well, what if you could say that the magical power that government has is the magical power to serve itself?
Well, that's hardly hardly magical.
Well, I guess if they get in power, and they absorb all the power, isn't that what happens?
Well, actually, I don't, there's something I avoid, I don't talk about this a lot because it really offends people, and I really should. But see, different governments, all governments have one thing in common.
Yeah.
And the one thing that's the most common is they all provide a platform where the strong can exploit the strong can exploit the weak. And that's really the major thing that the government does. Now, the question also is, who is our actual government? Now, see, we have the government we elect, but they're not really who decides what goes on in government. Now, if you take the 10 largest corporations in the world, or even the 10 richest people in the world, you combine them together, and they have more actual power than all of the leadership in the entire world, not just the United States. So these are the people who control the essence of our politicians. They're the ones that decide who they stay in office. You've already seen what can be done, to a politician that opposes the status quo. I mean, their own party can turn against them. These people have enormous power. So I would say, if we want to know who who our government is, that would be probably the 10, 20, maybe even the 100 richest people in the world. That's who really decides what happens in our lives, in our government. Now, and I'll go on to say that what we're really dealing with is a global organized crime syndicate. And that's exactly what we're facing. And people need to snap to that. If they don't, it's huh?
Can I back up just a second?
Sure.
The illustration of Silicon Valley, of big tech, as they're calling it right now, being able to totally silence the president of the United States, no matter what you think of him.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that argue? That supports what you're saying about them being in charge?
Yeah.
Right.
It supports them totally. It supports it totally, and that's my whole point. That these organizations are not censoring people for the good of the people that they're censoring.
They're censoring for the good of them.
Yeah, if you look at what they actually censor, they're actually censoring the truth, because the truth is what's the threat to them. And they're censoring what they're threatened with.
So that brings up the question: is where are we going to put this conversation?
Well,
because this is about them.
Well, what I was going to say, one thing I really wanted to talk about today, though, was the fact that about patriots on social media.
Patriots on social media.
Yeah, we have people who call themselves patriots on social media. Now, or do we really have any patriots on social media? Now, if you think of patriot, patriotism is giving up something else, something for the good of your country. How much sense does it make for a so-called patriot to go on Facebook and harangue about how bad Facebook is and censoring them, and then in the rest of their life they go on supporting Facebook and everything they do? They stay on Facebook, they continue to use it, but at the same time they'll point a finger at Facebook and chastise them for censoring themselves. Now, in my opinion, no patriot is going to do something like that. That's like complaining about the Nazis and then selling them bombs.
Yeah.
We actually had Americans like that. Actually, we had lots of Americans like Charles Lindbergh. Heck, the guy might as well have been a Nazi himself.
Charles, what did he do?
Lindbergh, well, he was just a Nazi. I mean, his whole approach to life, to business was like, he made public statements in support of the Nazi, the fascist approach of life to life, politics, and economics. We have lots of people like that. Something else that you have to understand about power. I'm sure that the United States is going to go into a very, very, very bad depression. That everybody is really just seriously hurt by. One thing that you can expect is that the corporations will survive. Now, I'm not saying that I want the corporations to die off, but you look at the results of World War II. What happened to the German corporations after World War II? Heck, they're going great guns. The same ones that were, building military equipment. They were, for Germany, well, they're building cars and doing all kinds of things. The Japanese, the same, all these major Japanese corporations, a lot of them were in the business of making, making weapons to attack the United States. Now, I'm not saying that we should do away with those anybody's corporations just because a country loses a war. But the fact is, if this is the power that corporations have, and it's the corporations, it's the corporations that are really calling the shots in the country and around the world. And as a matter of fact, we don't really have what you would call American corporations. We do in the smaller ones, but these larger companies that get tax benefits from us, these are global organizations. And frankly, they could care any less. They don't care any more about the people in the United States than they do in their other global markets. And the reason they're not American corporations is their stock is owned by people all over the world. And a corporation belongs to the people that owns it. So when someone wants to give benefits to a corporation, you don't let them do it on the basis that they're American corporations because we owe them some kind of loyalty, because we don't owe them anything. They don't owe us anything either. But the thing is, we have to realize these things. We'll find a place to post this stuff. And not everybody hates us. Somebody might share this stuff. If people started sending things like this out in email, we wouldn't need social media.
Yeah.
It's like people need a track to run on. They can't run on a track unless it's out there and the lanes are, the lanes are evenly divided and they know what lane to get into. You run on the Facebook track, the YouTube track, but you don't have to have a track. You can send out email. You got friends you can talk to. The fact is, we need to get away from social media. You don't continue to do business with people that are trying to destroy you. Yeah,
that's true. That kind of plays into something else you had said before about siding yourself with evil. Just to get by.
Doing something. Okay. I did that. It's easy to get into a situation where you think that you're dealing with evil. Like there are a lot of people that think that Donald Trump was evil, right?
Yeah.
So no matter what, we've got to get. Okay, let me see. Can you repeat that question again? Because I think I got started on something else.
Yeah, I can't. It was something about it had to do with the corporations and being aligned with the corporations. But I
know what it was. It was about when to confront evil.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught in the trap that we have this evil entity among us, but we benefit from it, right? So we need to confront this evil, but we can't do it now. Well. See, that never works. It never works because the evil grows and grows and grows regardless, and the problem gets to be insurmountable. So That's kind of what we're doing when we see evil in government. In the way government is implemented, we have people that say, well, we'll just wait and we'll get a better opportunity to confront this. What happened to the Jews in Germany in the 30s? They said, well, we need to wait and let this pass. Well, evil is not going to pass.
Yeah.
Evil is waiting for a moment to take more advantage of you, just like you're waiting for an advantageous time to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's like one of the opening lines in the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, where he points out that resistance should have begun at the moment of arrest.
Right. But
it didn't begin. And then that starts the whole book right there.
Yeah.
I really like that quote. And sometimes it's hard to stand up because in a big society you kind of assume that maybe somebody else will do it. And maybe you can join that person. But guess what? The very fact that you have the awareness that somebody should stand up right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there is the responsibility tapping you on the shoulder. And you could, put that aside. But, you can only put it aside so many times before either you completely are overtaken by it or you're completely overtaken by it. Yeah. It reminds me of a children's book about I can't remember what the title is, but the gist of it is this little kid wakes up one morning and there's a dragon by his bed. It's just a little itty bitty guy.
Yeah.
And he goes to tell his mom about the dragon, and mom says, "Dragons don't exist," And so then the dragon grew a little bit, and then down there he's eating his cereal, and the dragon comes down with him, he tells the mom about the dragon one more time, and the mom says, "Dragons don't exist," And so the dragon grew a little bit more, and pretty soon the dragon got to be as big as the house and carried it away. And the mom's still denying that dragons exist. And then the dad comes home from work. Where's the house? They had to go chase the house down. And eventually they came to grips with the dragon. And they started to shrink back again. But the point of the matter is that dealing with the dragon when it first emerges is much easier than allowing it to grow and grow and grow to a point where nobody can handle it. And that's a
good point.
And it's battling the dragon. And so one of the first dragons that people have to fight in that realm is their own dragons within, because if there is something that they know that they need to stand up to or say something about and they don't, that's an internal problem, that's an internal dragon that in that moment, if you decide that I will stand up to this dragon, you get a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And a little bit more able to deal with dragons, because dragons are going to come, and you have to be able to deal with them. And if you don't, they get out of hand to the point where, all right, dragon rules everything, so.
Well, there is something I'll add to that. And then I have a story myself. All right.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is, though, we need to be clear with people. There's a time to fight and there's a time not to. All right. So I don't mean every time, if the odds are serious, like if you wanted to interrupt a bank robbery or something and all you had was your bare hands and you saw people who had automatic weapons, it would make sense to duck. So, you have to always remember that when you go off to war, make sure that you got bullets.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't want to go off to war without any bullets. Now, this next one is a true story. You know, one time that I was playing in this small group and we got a job, and what it was to to play at a banquet, a dinner banquet for a group of cannibals. Now, this is a true story. Bunch of cannibals. So, yeah, we set up when we start playing, and the guest of honor had not shown up, and he got there real late. And those cannibals, they gave him the cold shoulder. Okay. All right, it was a lie. All right.
That was awful.
It's a lie, but not a bad joke.